welcome. The Union Cabinet has cleared the real estate regulatory bill, though a somewhat watered-down version of the initial bill proposed in 2013. Vast deficit today amongst home buyers, and the industry is already paying a hefty price with rapidly falling sales. On today's special show, we will examine the provisions of the bill to seek answers to the burning question: does the bill protect lakhs of home buyers across the country who face the brunt of project delays, one-sided agreements and shoddy product delivery? To answer that, I have with me Pankaj Bajaj, MD Aldeco Infrastructure and Properties, Vineet Relia, Managing Director of SARE Homes, Sudipta Kumar Pal, Advocate Supreme Court, Anshuman Magazine, CMD, CBRE, South Asia. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. Let's just take a quick look at some of the key provisions which have been cleared. First of all, has the bill widened the compliance net? Yes, it has. Along with residential commercial real estate projects will also be covered, and all projects will have to be registered with the regulator within 3 months, including size of just 1,000 square feet and 3 apartments. So even small developers cannot advertise, launch project without registration, and non-compliance will attract fines, and misinformation attract fines of 5% of the project cost. So we will keep showing you all the other provisions, but I think the first burning question is the buyer adequately protected? So Sudipta, you've been on the real estate shows several times. We've discussed how dire the situation is, especially in some of the key markets of NCR, where project delays have crossed actually 50 months. What do you think?
I think it's come little late. It's good for us. And it will certainly, any law that comes in, all the stakeholders get to have a say on this. I think the regulator, the implementing agency, if they really look at it objectively and make use of the law, I think it's all the better. I think the real estate sector will take a better out of this.
All right, so it will become more transparent, hopefully. Anshuman Magazine, what's your reaction? We've been hearing voices since morning. Developers' point of view is that it's somewhat draconian. There could be criminal proceedings against developers who actually delay their projects. Okay, we've lost Anshuman. We'll get back to him. But is this bill draconian, or do you think it will protect the buyers? Draconian for the developers, Pankaj, of course.
Yes, if you do commit willful defaults, the developers will face the full force of the law. But where the developers are apprehensive about this bill is that the term willful default has not been adequately defined. So what we fear is that we will be at the mercy of discretionary powers of the authority that be, who will be defining what willful default is.
Why do you call it discretionary? He's a regulator. He's supposed to examine.
But it's not defined.
Okay.
So, and another thing, it says that you cannot launch a project unless you register a project with the developer, which is a very good thing. And it does protect the customers, to answer your second question, from the menace of pre-launches. Developer launching projects without having title of the land, without getting all the requisite approvals. But again, what is the mechanism for the registration? It says it's going to be online. It's going to be a deemed registration within 15 days. But subsequently, the regulator is going to examine your documents and has the power to revoke that registration. It is not defined on what grounds. If it has been deemed...
So these things will get clear. But overall, on the provisions, Anshuman Magazine, we have him with us. Anshuman, look at some of the key provisions. One, that you will be penalized if you do not declare everything, the promoter's background, the approvals, etc., and register your project with the regulator. It goes on to actually say that the one-sided agreements, especially where the buyer had to pay 18% interest to the developer for a delayed payment, but the developer himself got away with 5 rupees per square foot, which actually works out to less than 3% in a mid-sized home. Do you think some of these big changes are just something which were waiting to happen to protect the home buyer in India?
See, first of all, you asked me in an earlier question that what do I feel of it. I think this is good that the regulator bill has come in, because this will give confidence to investors in the long term. This will attract more investment in the sector, both keeping the consumer in place, but also importantly institutional investors, which will come in both domestic and foreign.
Okay.
But leaving that aside, so it is good. But at the same time, along with the regulator bill, the government also has to take certain accountability. It will, one of the reasons why, if you look at any sector in India, be it telecom, be it cars, where the costs have gone down, services improved, quality is improved is because of competition. If we make development business more difficult to enter, and part of it is part of the regulatory bill where, some of the laws I think are still draconian, like you mentioned, then we will not get more people coming into the market, doing development, more professional, better people, which will increase competition, which will reduce prices, improve quality, etc. in the long term. So there are certain provisions which need to improve.
We thought that the industry was evolving. There were, I don't want to name any companies here, but there is a company in NCR, young bunch of architects, professionals who launched several projects on the promise of transparency, and we know what's happening to many of those projects of that company. The developers have split and the projects are getting inordinately delayed. So I'm not so sure. There's been enough time, Vineet Relia, for the industry to clean up its act by itself and self-regulate. There are only a handful of developers who we can really call as honest, transparent and following the rules and actually protecting or thinking for the buyer. There's a word in Hindi which is called fitrat and niyat. Somehow the industry hasn't convinced the buyer that its niyat is right, intention is right.
So I think, the way you put it, the rules of the game are defined now, right? But what we are worried about is there are certain provisions about how is going to be executed on the ground.
Okay.
If you again get us back to a situation that we have to go and plead to a individual's judgment, then you will be creating more issues. Otherwise, yes, like Pankaj put it, if there is a willful default and if somebody has a wrong intention, the consumers are protected. More importantly, the financial institutions are going to be protected, so a lot of new investment will come in, which I think is going to, the growth will happen many times now.
All right. So there is a pro and a con to every argument, and of course we've heard the developers say that there will be another layer of approval added. Already they face 50 plus approvals, and we all know that those take just a lot of time. In fact, there is absolute no surety of how long approvals could take. They could take 3 months to 6 months to 12 months, and that's a big bane of contention, which of course the bill has just not taken care of. But consider this, why are we coming back to the buyer's problem? The average delay in delivering projects across the National Capital Region and Mumbai metropolitan region between 2011 and 14, and these have been good 4 years for the developers to have actually bucked up their act, has been 30 months and 20 months respectively. Mind you, these are averages, and actually mellow the nasty buyer experience by months in some cases. In MMR, there are 2.7 lakh units which have been substantially delayed and are under construction. In NCR, the number is 3.8 lakhs, and the all India total adds up to 10 lakhs. So something's definitely wrong. How much of it is willful? How much of it is because of approval delays? There is no number to it. But hear out this buyer. We've got Amit Chauhan. He's been battling with one of the new developers who came with a promise of actually delivering in time, and all the projects are stuck. Amit, you have a question for the panel here, and what are your own concerns or positive reactions to the bill?
Manisha, first of all, the buyers welcome some progress in this regard, but I think builder lobby has its way. I have two questions to the expert on this panel. Number one is, do you think maintaining only 50% in escrow account is the solution? We buyers are very disappointed with this. Almost all builders have a habit of diverting money to other businesses. While we suffer endless delay, they become land sharks. I give you one example. Recently, if you talk about my builder only, they are running 7 projects currently. All of them are delayed. Now this builder changes his name and buy land worth 2,300 crore rupees. So all the money that was collected from our projects is diverted.
Okay.
Question is, who would stop this nuisance?
Okay, so we got the question. So Dipta, that is the big question here. We are saying, all right, some of the new developers who are coming, they're young, they're professional, they will not work in the same manner. But a lot of that has got actually shattered in the last few months. You heard of Amit, we don't want to name any companies here, but there has been a case of some sort of willful default at that end. The escrow money, or the money which has to be put in escrow account, in the initial bill proposed was 70%. That has got diluted to 50%. Do you think it's got diluted too much?
See, we'll have to, it's very difficult to come out with a figure whether 70 is good enough or 50. I think...
Will it prevent developers from now diverting funds from the current projects which they're supposed to build with the buyer's money to other land acquisition businesses?
I think he has the right to take away some amount of money, that's for sure. But the thing is, I look at it slightly differently. The whole bill was actually hijacked, or a lot of, you can say, it stopped on this issue. The very fact that it has subliminally told people is that the builders wants to take away their money beforehand. If a builder is not left with any financial interest in the project, if he is not left with any money left in the business, he is going to put these projects into trouble.
Okay, so Pankaj, there's a point here. The 50%, 70%, I do know that in the housing ministry, developers just wore down the officials on this point. They said, look, we will not accept 70%, and everybody is smiling, so we do know we've got a senior correspondent following the housing ministry. Why not 50%? Only 50% of the buyer's money, he's paying for a full product. Only 50% of his money is asked to be kept in the escrow account. 50%, you still can take it out and pay for the land, etc. In fact, I believe that 70% was the right number, because now with 50%, developers don't have any skin in the game left.
First up, let me refute the contention that we were against the escrow mechanism.
You're not against the escrow mechanism.
We were totally for it.
Wanted to dilute the percentage.
See, what is happening is 50% is an average percentage across projects, across locations. If you're doing a development in South Mumbai, now land is going to constitute 80% of the cost there, and the construction is going to be another 10%, and the balance 10% would be the overheads or the profits or whatever. So in such cases, why 50%? The builder has already invested 80%. In other cases, let us say a project is nearing completion and you're going to buy in a building which is going to be given possession of in the next 6 months. Why 50%? He's already invested in the land. And
I buy that argument.
So 50% is an average across the board.
Pankaj, in India,
yes.
and that's the beauty of this Indian market, or the bane of this Indian real estate market. It is the only market where the buyer starts buying on paper.
That's not true. It happens across the world. It happens in Dubai. It happens everywhere.
Very
Off
few
plan
markets.
sales.
In most markets, in Singapore to US, you actually buy when the product is ready. Am I wrong about that, Vineet?
No, I think, like, for example, you mentioned Dubai. Dubai, what happens is earlier you had pre-launches. Now the regulator is in. Okay, sorry. So he mentioned Dubai. Now they have a regulator in place. So before you launch, what you have to do is you have to award the contract. You have to submit a bank guarantee. So it's like once you had your skin in the game, then you're allowed to launch. But they're all off-plan sales.
30%.
It's only China. Yeah, it's only mainly China which practices that model of when the house is built, then the sales start.
Even in the US.
US, the market is saturated over here. So the market is very mature.
So there are some markets like Dubai which are way more shallower and way much more tinier than Indian real estate market as of today.
But 50% is a big improvement over where we are, and I do hope that it's going to prevent a lot of developers from diverting.
I think even states are going to have a say.
All of you agree that that escrow account requirement was absolutely necessary. Anshuman, do you agree that, okay, it's got diluted from 70 to 50%, but ensuring the developer keeps 50% of the money that he takes from the buyers in an escrow account to be used for that project is perhaps one of the biggest positives of this bill?
Absolutely agree with Manisha, because we are arguing 50 and 70%. I think 50% itself is a big relief. So imagine if I'm putting money in a project and I know 50% will be there. Because you should also see the cost of financing, the cost of money in India is very high. If you're keeping 70%, it is just going to escalate the cost. And it is very, and like any other business, if you are manufacturing a car or something, you don't tell that auto industry that how much do you keep, how do you take out. But I agree that this is very important. There's money in escrow. This will really make sure there's anybody unscrupulous. The risk goes down. And I'm happy with 50% because right now it's zero, you know.
Okay, fair enough. Now the other provision, which at least from a buyer's perspective, I think is a big positive, Sudipta, and you may tell me whether you agree, is the carpet super area debate. Every developer prices the project on super area. Super area is your carpet area, which is what you get within the four walls, the built-up area, the common areas, the landscaping, and plus. So that plus has never been defined. In fact, the ratio has been worsening in Mumbai. Sometimes you pay for 1,000 square feet home and what you get is 550 square feet. And we know of cases which is happening. So the regulator now says you can only sell on carpet area. Is this the big plus or not?
I think this is a way to standardize things. And it's very nice that, different schemes will have flats of same size, but the additional facilities or the amenities of that project will possibly make that project a little more expensive. The same apartment in a better project or maybe with more amenities is going to cost more.
As long as I know what I'm paying
Correct.
for. Vineet, is that the right argument? Because for the longest time, developers just refused to agree to that clause. They said, why? We're giving so many amenities. A luxury project will, of course, have more loading. We get it. But why can I not know what am I paying for the four walls in the space that I get, and what am I paying for the rest of the amenities, and what is plus plus?
See, I think the way we look at it, every brochure, every sale would have the layouts defined, the rooms defined, the measurements defined there. So if a user finally, when he takes his possession, he can measure them. There is always a super area because the components keep on adding.
But why this reluctance of
there is
not
no reluctance.
selling on carpet or not defining a
we
price
can sell it on carpet.
area?
The prices will go up because the amenities you want, the clubs you want, the the firefighting norms keep changing, underground parkings keep getting added up. All those have to be added into the cost. No?
Okay.
So somewhere ultimately it's the whole product. It's
so
not only that
change
within the wall.
now if the bill does get
No,
passed?
I think the change talks about a disclosure. It's more about a disclosure. So the disclosure is very, very important. The customer has to know, even if he's paying 1,000 for a 500, but he should know the rooms he'll get is only 500.
So you're saying that right now you don't have to sell on carpet area, you only have to disclose the carpet
Yes.
area. You can still continue to sell or price the product on super area.
Yes,
no, it's going to be like, I'm going to sell you an apartment for 50 lakh rupees. The super area, which is a 1,000 square feet. Now I have to compulsorily also disclose
the carpet area.
The carpet area, that it's going to be 700 or 600. In fact, not also enclosed. The primary square footage which has to be disclosed is the carpet area, and it is optional for you to disclose the super area.
Super area. Okay,
the customer can choose his own denominator to divide the price by and get a per square
foot. So you have to total up the rooms in the layout and just make it simple for the user to understand.
Okay, more transparency. One last point that I'm going to touch upon, and I think this one was just waiting to happen. CCI, of course, called builder-buyer agreements one-sided and actually used a very, very strong term for it, saying they are abusive across the country. Now, I've had several arguments from developers on why they are not one-sided, but none of them have managed to convince me. Anshuman, can you convince me that builder-buyer agreements were fair to some extent, or they were, as CCI said, extremely one-sided and lopsided so far? So now you need a model buyer agreement, and the developer agreement will have to be very close to that.
I think CCI may have not seen the builder-buyer agreements of 15 years back when it was completely one-sided. So I would say there is a significant improvement in what you call builder-buyer agreements. I remember 10-15 years back, even if the developer delayed the project, the penalty had to be paid by the buyer. So many things was not happening, and there was nothing the consumer could do before. So if CCI had seen that and seen now, I'm sure they would have been happier, which does not say that today's what you call contract or the builder-buyer agreement is perfect. I'm sure there's an improvement. I do see for the larger developers, they have now, there are builder-buyer agreements where there's a delay in the project, they'll pay in. But certainly there could be more improvement on those agreements. But what I've seen over the years already, it is much better, and I'm sure with CCI and the regulator and so much attention towards this, and with competition increasing in the market, because I think we don't give enough credit to market forces. In the past, if you looked at any city, there was hardly any option a consumer had. Today, when the market is down, there are many other projects, so the consumer has a better say, the consumer is more aware, and they can negotiate a better builder-buyer agreement.
Of how
but
aware
yes,
the
there are
consumer
scrupulous
is,
developers somewhere who
still
maybe
projects are not getting diluted. I'm sorry to interject.
But I think we are in a better place than we were in the past.
But Sudipta, are the builder buyers, has competition? Of course competition has. What has it done? We know who the good developers are, for sure. Their delivery track record, and only the good developers come for all our debates and discussions, because the rest of them do not want to come. So that's another proof. They've become the voice of the industry, but there's very little which is actually giving them support other than their own performances and their own project performances. Isn't it true?
It's true. And secondly, as far as this builder-buyer agreements or any agreement for that matter is concerned, there are two kinds of interpretation. A plain reading by a general person and a legal interpretation of that is very different. At times we find that a particular clause of an agreement might sound very, very balanced, but when it's actually interpreted in the court of law, it's completely towards the side of a builder. So that has been our experience over the years, and we have seen that every time the court has to hammer it down with certain laws to say that you could not have done this, or the interpretation could not have been like this. See, the thing is...
So it is one-sided.
Yes.
And you think what the bill has done is a positive step.
It is.
It will have a model buyer-seller agreement, and developers will have to ensure that their agreements are close to that. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. We can go on this discussion, but I think if you just get the figures of what has happened to sales and how they have slumped, the inventory overhangs, which is the rate at which a unit is sold at the current rate of absorption in the NCR market, that number has crossed 50 months. Unsold units have just touched 3 lakh in number. That just tells you that there is a downturn. And this downturn in India's real estate is a harsh consequence of some of the business practices by not just developers, but also state authorities who use real estate as the best way to earn under the table money. So I'm going to conclude there that it's not just the developers. A lot needs to be fixed in the system, and the regulator bill is just the beginning of that process. Thanks very much for joining me. We can only hope that the bill approved by the Union Cabinet must be passed by the Parliament if the buyer confidence has to be restored.